Hi, everybody. Mr. Armstrong here. I'm sorry I couldn't be there with you in person today, so I thought I would do the next best thing and record a video for you to help explain a little bit more about what we'll be doing when you arrive back to school after your 3-day weekend. Next Tuesday, we begin the process of glazing our ceramics projects. Now, if you can kind of remember back to when we last had our clay with us, I told you that the week of President's Day, we would be glazing your projects after they had been in the kiln for the first time. So next week is President's Day. So next Tuesday, we start that process. I wanted to tell you a little bit about what you can expect when you come to school next Tuesday, so you can kind of use your weekend to prepare yourself for that and hopefully get really excited to do it. Okay. So next Monday, you know this already, we don't have any school. Okay. So next Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, we will be focusing our attention on glazing our ceramics projects. Okay. So for you sixth graders, we're going to kind of pause on the donuts. Seventh graders, we're going to put the shoes away for just a little bit, and we're going to spend next Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday glazing our projects. Now you'll notice we have next Friday available as well if we kind of need it as like an emergency backup day. Maybe students don't get finished over those 3 days, or maybe you miss a day and you kind of need a little extra time to finish things up. Friday is available to us. But for most students, this takes about 3 class periods to finish up. So next Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, that's what we'll be focusing on in class. Okay. So your projects should be finished, done, glazed, ready for the kiln by the time you leave class next Thursday. And then just like before, I take it from there. Okay, I'm going to get them in the kiln for the second time over the next couple of weeks, let them cool off, and then hand them back to you. You can expect to get your project finished, done, glazed, fired, graded, ready to take home with you by around that last week of the quarter. Hopefully sooner if I can get to it, but I've got 169 projects that I have to glaze, or sorry, I have to get into the kiln. So it might take me a little bit longer, but you will be getting them back. I absolutely promise you. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what glaze is and what this process is going to look like. Okay, so glaze, if you look there at the picture on your screen, glaze is that outer coating, right? That layer that has been permanently fused to your pottery by firing. Okay, so all the different colors that you see there, that shiny quality that those projects all have, that comes from the glaze. Okay, now glaze does a couple things for us. Most importantly, it's going to add some cool color to your project. It's going to let you make your project more individualized, make it stand out, make it bright and colorful, make it shiny. So you're going to be able to decorate your project a little bit more by using the glaze. And for you sixth graders, it's also going to waterproof your item, which is going to be really, really handy if you've made something like a mug or a cup or a vase or something that you plan to put water into. You got to make sure that it's been glazed. Otherwise, you won't be able to put any water in it. Okay, so glaze finally kind of renders a vessel like a mug or a cup suitable for putting liquid into. Okay, so it kind of seals the clay up, makes it so that the water or nothing will damage it. So along with making your project beautiful, it also makes it functional and usable. Okay, so that's what glaze is essentially. Now, if you look at this picture here, it kind of explains the process a little bit better. On the far left-hand side, that is called bisqueware. Okay, that is what your project is going to look like when you get it back from me on Tuesday. Okay, bisqueware is clay that has been fired one time in the kiln, and it's going to have a very kind of dull, sandy, almost pinkish quality to it. It's going to be rock hard and firm. We can't add or change anything to our clay at this point, but it just doesn't have its kind of shiny outer coating on it. So we call it bisqueware. Okay, that image there in the middle, that is what your project is going to look like when you're finished with it on Thursday. Okay, as you're applying your glaze, it's not going to be shiny and beautiful until I put it in the kiln for a second time and that glaze becomes permanently bonded to your project. That is what your project is going to look like all the way on the right when you get it back from me at the end of the quarter. Okay, so let me explain what I'm talking about, because this can kind of confuse students, and I don't want anybody to be concerned or alarmed when they come to school on Tuesday, and start glazing their projects. So here's what I mean. Okay, glaze, while you're working with it, does not always look like how that glaze is going to turn out when it comes out of the kiln. Okay, the kiln, you have to remember, fires at about 1800 degrees, which is like super crazy hot. okay? And so to account for that, the people who make glaze, they have to kind of make the glaze a little bit different so it can survive that kiln and turn out the bright colors that you want it to be, okay? So if you look at the picture there on the left, that's what the project looked like when it went into the kiln. And on the right, that's what it looked like when it came out of the kiln, okay? So what I'm going to do for you on Tuesday, and I'll show you all of this, is on my glaze jars, on the top, on the lid, I have what's called a test tile, okay? Now that test tile has the glaze on it. It's been fired. So that's what the color is going to look like when it comes out of the kiln, okay? When you dip your paintbrush into the glaze, what you see on the end of your paintbrush is not going to look like that test tile, okay? So trust the tile and the color that is. Don't trust what's on your brush because your colors will change slightly when they come out of the kiln, okay? More on that on Tuesday. All right, now how are we going to apply our glaze? There's a lot of ways to do this. You can dip ceramics projects in glaze to get a nice even layer on everything. You can put it in like a compressed air tube, and you can spray it with a nozzle like you would if you were like painting a car or something like that. I've done that. That's really fun. In our classroom, though, we're going to be using paintbrushes. What you see there on the screen is how we're going to be applying the glaze to our projects. And we do this for a number of reasons. One, it's really manageable in the classroom. I've got a lot of paintbrushes. It allows multiple kids to use one color at a time, which is nice. And it also, for the 7th and 8th graders who have a lot of detail on their project, it allows you to kind of get your glaze into kind of smaller areas and achieve finer details, be more precise with where it's going. So I think paintbrushes work the best. And we'll talk more about how to use your paintbrush properly in just a few minutes in the next couple of slides. Okay. Now, what I want to really make sure I drive home in this presentation to you is the number one most important rule of glazing your projects. So I'm going to slow down. I'm going to say it very clearly. Do not, under any circumstances, put any glaze whatsoever on the bottom of your project. Okay? None. Not even a drop or a little bit. Don't do it. I will not fire your project if you get any glaze on the bottom of it. Here's why. Okay? When your project goes into my kiln, it's going to sit on a shelf. So the bottom of your project is coming into contact with my kiln shelf. Okay? And if there's any glaze on the bottom of your project, even a little bit, it's going to turn into liquid molten glass inside the kiln when it heats up, and then when it cools, it's going to glue your project to my kiln shelf permanently, forever. I will not be able to get it off. Okay? So what I have to do in circumstances like that is I have to take a giant hammer and I have to smash your project into 1,000 tiny pieces, okay? Because my kiln shelves are really, really expensive, and I love my kiln to death, and I don't want it to get ruined, okay? So if you get any glaze whatsoever on the bottom of your project, I will not fire it. The image that you see on the screen, that project ain't getting fired because there is a little bit of glaze there on the very outer edge touching the bottom of the project. So this project would be a no fire. I wouldn't put it in the kiln. Not doing it. I'm not risking it. Okay. So you need to be really mindful while you're glazing next week. Okay. That if your project sitting on the table, the parts that are touching the table, you don't glaze them. Okay. More on that on Tuesday. It's super important. I will not fire your project if there's any glaze on the bottom. Okay. So now to kind of wrap things up, a couple more do's and don'ts for next week so you can kind of plan for how you're going to do this thing when you come to school next week. Okay, so some of the do's. You want to apply your glaze in a nice, thin, smooth, even layer across your project. Okay, if you slop and slap the glaze on there and you're kind of messy with it, it's going to look messy when it comes out of the kiln. Okay, if you apply your glaze in a nice, smooth, even layer, it's going to look beautiful when it's finished and fired. Okay. You're going to want to apply your glaze in layers. 2 or 3 layers is going to give you a nice, deep, rich, vibrant color. If you only do 1 layer of glaze, it's going to look a little translucent, a little transparent. It's not going to be as vibrant as you want it to be. So you want to make sure you develop a nice, rich, deep color with about 2 or 3 layers of glaze on your project. Okay? You're going to want to cover the outside of your project entirely with the exception of the bottom. Okay? What I mean is, if you don't glaze part of your project, it's not going to magically change color, okay? You got to put the glaze on it for it to get a new color, Okay. So if you don't glaze it, it's going to stay that exact same sandy, dull pink color that it is when you get it. You got to put the glaze on there if you want it to change color. Okay. And lastly, on the do's side, you're going to be moving around the room from station to station, visiting whatever colors that you want to work with. While you are moving around the room next week, you have to do it extremely carefully. I know your projects look like they're really strong because they've been in the kiln one time, but they're still really fragile. If you were to drop them on the floor or knock somebody's project off of a table, it would shatter and I wouldn't be able to fix it. I don't want to see anybody leave my classroom in tears because their project got damaged. So you need to be really careful with how you move around the room next week. Okay, now on to the don'ts side. Okay, don't move the supplies from station to station. Okay, each table and each color is going to have its own stuff, its own brushes, its own plates, things like that. Don't move those supplies around the room. It's just going to cause chaos and a big giant mess. So don't move the supplies around the room. You, however, are going to be moving around the room as you visit different colors. My supplies, they stay put. Okay. Oh my goodness, this drives me nuts. Don't dip the entire paintbrush into the jar of glaze like a monster, okay? Just dip the bristles of the brush. That's all you need. If you dip the entire brush into the glaze, there's going to be glaze all over the handle. When the next kid goes to pick it up, it's going to get all over their hand. It's going to end up on people's clothes. It might even end up on the bottom of someone's project by mistake. So don't make a mess. Don't dip the entire brush in, just the tip, okay? Similarly, don't leave the brush inside of the glaze jar and just move to another table. You know how you make like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and you're not sure if you want a second peanut butter and jelly sandwich? So you just kind of like leave the knife in the jar and you're like, I'll get to it later. Don't do that. Take the brush out, wipe it off, leave it on the plate for the next person to pick up. If you leave it inside the jar, glaze is going to get all over the handle and then we got a problem. Okay. My last don't. I'll repeat it. It's super important. Do not glaze the bottom of your project, okay? I won't be mad at you. I just won't fire your project, okay? I won't do it. I'm not going to risk it gluing to the shelf. I'm not going to risk it getting damaged or ruining anything. So don't put any glaze on the bottom of your project, even on accident. I won't fire it. Super important. Don't do it, okay? So in conclusion, okay, here's what I want you to do over the weekend, okay? I want you to go home and I want you to incubate. Okay. I want you to brainstorm. I want you to put some thought into how you want to glaze your project and what colors you plan on using. You should come to class on Tuesday with a plan. Okay. So that way you're not just picking up random colors and slapping it all over your project. Okay. There on the screen, I have a list of the colors that I'll have available to you on Tuesday. Pretty much every color of the rainbow will be out in my classroom. Okay. How you use those colors and what kind of patterns or decorations or designs you choose to glaze into your project are up to you. But there are the colors I have. So start incubating and planning for what you want to do. That way on Tuesday, you can come to class ready to go, excited, and with a pretty clear idea in your mind of what you want to try to achieve with your glaze. Okay? So hopefully you answered the questions that kind of popped up as this video was playing for you. Hopefully you're excited to work in our on our glaze for next week. Okay, I appreciate you watching the video, and I look forward to seeing you guys next Tuesday. Until then, be good for the sub. Push in your chairs, okay? And I'll see you guys next Tuesday. Bye, everybody.